Welcome to the McAfee Center Stage webinar series. My name is Nick, and I will be your host. This webinar is a brief overview covering common use cases and scenarios regarding this topic. It is not intended to be all-encompassing. If assistance is needed, please contact McAfee Technical Support. Our speakers today are Ben Ellis and Mitchell Buehler. Ben is a Senior Technical Support Engineer with 12 years at McAfee. Supporting a wide variety of McAfee applications and enterprise support, Ben supports training and communications with engineering, as well as support for application control, EDR, and MAR. Mitchell is an advanced technical support engineer for the Endpoint support team and has been with McAfee since May of 2018. Mitchell provides support for products in the Endpoint AV segment, including EDR, MAR, and ENS Threat Prevention plus ATP. Ladies and gentlemen, Ben and Mitchell.
Thank you, Nick. Today we're going to cover what EDR, or Endpoint and Detection and Response, is. We're going to cover the new features of EDR 3.3 and 3.2. We're going to also give you some tips and tricks and walk you through installing the EDR extension on your EPO on-premises server, as it's slightly different from the Envision EPO server. And then we will also walk you through verifying and testing your EDR installation. So that would be showing that your client and your extensions are both reporting to the EDR UI properly. So what is Endpoint Detection and Response? EDR is a cloud-delivered service. It enables you to detect advanced threats, fully investigate these threats, and quickly respond in your environment. Our continuous data collection allows our advanced analytics to detect suspicious behavior to allow your analysts respond to threats faster. So our primary functions is really to monitor and collect the data as threats come across. We analyze this to make it so that you can track and easily understand what's going on in the environment. And then it also is adding a little bit of automatic response to identified threats that are known issues, and gives you the ability to handle that threat appropriately. So this is what a high-level architecture of EDR looks like. You can see that everything happens on the Envision EDR client. As things happen or progress on the client, we will send that data over or through the McAfee agent and DXL channels. Once EPO and the DXL broker receives the data, we'll send that over to our EDR cloud, which will send the data through an enrichment process and show up in the UI where you can view your data. So this is some of the capabilities of the EDR UI. We have the monitoring alert dashboard. The alerting dashboard provides all the detections that are found suspicious, which will allow you fast visibility on the details of the process that generated this detection. While this alerting dashboard provides more of like the single or individual alerts, we also have the monitoring dashboard, which will show you groups of these alerts that are aggregated by hash or command line of the process that triggered the threat. We also have the ability to do a real-time search on your clients that have EDR installed. We come with a lot of persistent collectors, which are like small components for like file or registries. We can get really a number of things that live on each system. We also have the ability for leveraging snapshots, and what I mean by that is we provide an option for investigations, which will help your analysts quickly investigate like a whole threat to see where or what's common around the all the different security incidents. So that data that's collected at the time of the investigation is what we call a snapshot, and it's like an overall picture of the machine at the time that incident triggered or the investigation was created. And then we give you the ability in the UI to quarantine that device even if it's on a VPN when you see the suspicious activity. So now we're going to talk about the new features in the EDR 3.3 client that was released in early December. In the monitoring dashboard, we've added some more network connection event details under the process activity pane. We've given you more network information related to the layer 7. Whether it be a URL, the header request, a header response of these network connections. We've also added the URL and verb to the historical search dashboard for the network connections. We've also added a tamper protection, which prevents your users from uninstalling the EDR client without entering a password. And we've also brought more visibility into the MITRE attacks. Most visibility features from the client are accessible from the UI, or we've leveraged some of the new detections in the EDR 3.3 client. But we will keep increasing some of the capabilities with the next cloud releases and weekly updates that we add on the back end. So these are the new features that we brought in the EDR 3.2 client that we released in August. We give you the ability to now end quarantine on devices that are connected over VPN. In the policy, we give you an option to exclude your VPN client, so that way when you do quarantine a device, it can still communicate home and you have full control over it. We've added TIE and ATD reputation to the monitoring dashboard, and we've also added ENS events to the monitoring and historical search. So if you have ENS installed on your machines, they will also report to the EDR. We give the ability for real-time search columns to be sorted, so you can now sort by like the ascending or descending in each of these columns. And we also give you the ability to select custom time ranges on the historical search. Used to, we give you, it would be like 3 or 4 days on a drop-down, but now we give you a full calendar to allow you to select the time range for your needs. So over the next section, we will be covering how to install Envision EDR on your on-prem EPO. We'll cover installing the extensions and software, checking the DXL fabric, and we will show you how to check the connection to the Envision EDR backend, and then we'll give you a couple of tips and tricks, checklists that you can follow. Now I'm going to cover how to install the EDR extensions and software on your on-prem EPO. We'll first need some of the prereqs. Make sure you have EPO 5.9 or 5.10, and make sure that you have your DXL EPO extensions and software up to date. I believe we are compatible with 4.0 and up, and the latest extensions is 6 right now. Please make sure you also have a DXL broker, and it can be either Windows or Linux. And then we have optional integrations with SIM, TIE, and ATD. And TIE and ATD was added in the 3.2 extensions, but we won't be covering any of the integrations in this webinar. Now I'm going to show you a demo of the EDR extensions install. Today we're going to install the Envision EDR 3.2 software and extension. The first thing you do is log into your EPO console. I'm going to use the software catalog, but you could also use the download site and download each of our EDR extension and packages. I searched for EDR in the catalog, and it came up with Envision Endpoint Detection and Response 3.2. You can see here that there is one package and 4 extensions. Currently, this is by design. Our snapshot tool extension and our EDR client hotfix 1 extension will automatically check in the software into your current master repository. For this recording, I'm going to click check in all, and I'm going to accept the agreement and allow everything to check in. Now you can see the EDR extension and software are checked in from the software catalog. To check this is the case, we can go to the extensions and we can see that the Envision EDR has the EDR client, the EDR extension, and then we have the EDR client packages and the snapshot tool packages. In the software master repository, we will have the EDR client, the snapshot tools, and the EDR DAP. Now I'm going to show you a demo of how to check your DXL fabric and view any errors associated with that DXL broker. To check the DXL client fabric for any issues, you can click on your menu DXL Exchange Layer Fabric and you will see your DXL brokers. I currently only have one, so mine may look a little bit different than yours, but it's the same principle. You click on the broker that you want and make sure that it's connected. You can see here things to note is like the clients connected is currently 8, and this means that there's 8 clients with DXL installed. It doesn't necessarily mean EDR or anything is communicating just yet. If you click on Service and you click on the Envision EDR, you will see these have these request topics. Please make sure these are all gray, just like you see here. Another place to check for errors is looking at the extension. As you can see here, that I currently have an exception as unable to send batch. I have not linked my EDR client yet, but this is an example of showing you what an error would look like if you're seeing something on your DXL broker. Now that you've checked your DXL fabric, we'll need to go check the DXL Cloud Data Bus settings to make sure that the API is configured properly. Please go to Menu, Server Settings, DXL Cloud Data Bus. You will need to know where your tenant is located to configure the API URL properly. On the right-hand side of the screen, you will see the different APIs for the different locations. Please note that the proxy settings here is different from the EPO proxy settings. You may need to configure the proxy settings so that way your EDR communications or traces can be communicated to our EDR cloud. With that being said, you'll also need to make sure that the EDR ports and the EDR URL list is allowed on your network. If you need more information on that, please see our EDR guide, our install guide at docs.mcafee.com. Now I'm going to show you how to link your EDR tenant to your EPO server. After validating the Cloud Bus URL, we are going to link our CloudBridge account that we can log in with the Envision EDR UI. So I will put my email and password in to link the account. And now you will see that it's linked. Once you have your account linked, you can go to the Envision EDR settings. This will now show connection successful. I will then log in to the Envision EDR cloud, and we will validate that my EDR server is reporting. I was currently already logged in from another session, so it did not prompt me for my username and password. What I will do is go to the /support page, and at this point I will be able to see my EPOs connected. So this is my current EPO that I just linked. As you can see, everything says connected except for the SIM and the ATD, which I do not have. Now that we've covered connected the EDR installation in the demo, here's a list of tips and tricks or checklists that we covered in the demo to help you with your install in your environment. Tip 1 is to make sure that your EDR extension is checked into EPO. Tip 2 is to make sure you know which API you should have your cloud data bus URL pointing to. The third one, tip 3, would be to make sure that your Envision Cloud Bridge is linked with an administrator for your tenant ID for the UI. Tip 4 would be to make sure that your ports and your URLs are allowed through your network. Tip 5 is to always make sure that your DXO clients and brokers are on the latest version. And tip 6 is to make sure that you fill in the DXO Cloud Data Bus proxy settings with your proxy settings for your EPO server. These are the logs locations for any EDR extension related issue and DXO broker connection issues. Please see the following KBs in the slide to enable debug logging for each of these components. I am now going to hand over this presentation to my colleague Mitchell, and he'll cover the rest of our presentation.
Thanks, Ben. Now that you've got EDR installed and performed some basic health checks of the installation, you can now move forward and go ahead and test and verify that EDR installation. So we'll start with real-time search, just doing a couple basic searches to find your devices that have EDR installed and active and verify that they're actually reporting back up through the cloud. Historical search to verify that we've got that historical logging flowing up. We'll do that by just creating a new file at an endpoint and finding it through the cloud UI. Verify that the EDR client as a whole, and especially the trace function, is working by triggering a trace detection using a PowerShell command from our knowledge-based article, KB 93745, and verify that actions are working by taking a couple different actions on a device, namely quarantine and also stopping a process. To test the real-time search function, you first just need to log on to the EDR workspace and navigate to the real-time search dashboard. From there, type the query hostinfo hostname connection _ status into the search bar. Please note that that is case sensitive, and press the search magnifying glass icon. Once you've done that, all systems that are responding through DXL whose EDR client is functioning correctly and all of the communication channels are working correctly will be displayed in that list. And the connection status is just the status of the endpoint as to whether or not it's quarantined. To verify that historical search is working, start by logging onto your test device and creating a file named example.com on a machine that's running Envision EDR. Then log on to EDR Workspace and navigate to the historical search dashboard. Type the device name into the search bar and select it from the drop-down. And you do actually have to select it from the drop-down. It won't just automatically find it if you click search. Then select File from the Data to Display list on the left, and then the file activity from the past 4 hours should be displayed or will be displayed by default. You can change that, but you'll probably need to give it a couple minutes after creating that file for that data to flow up to the cloud, because this is historical search. It's not really intended to be exactly real time, but it should pop up in a fairly limited amount of time. Next, to verify that trace detections are functioning correctly with the EDR client on the machines, you first need to navigate to the McAfee knowledge base article, KB93745, and download the attachment edrtestcommand.zip from the bottom of the page. Once you've downloaded it, extract it, open up that text file contained within it, and copy the command from the text file. From there, just open up a command prompt or a PowerShell. It doesn't have to be an admin command prompt or PowerShell, but it can be if you want to. And then execute the command from the text file. Once that's been done and the command prompt or PowerShell window exits, log on to the EDR workspace and navigate to the monitoring dashboard. And once that event processes and gets sent up to the cloud, you'll see it. You'll see it there as the screenshot shows in your dashboard. Finally, to verify that actions performed from the cloud are actually taking effect on the endpoints, we're going to quarantine the same device that we just performed that threat detection test on in the previous step. All you need to do is log on to the EDR workspace, navigate to the monitoring page that you were just on where that threat was generated, select a threat from the test device. In this case, we're just using that same threat and the same device, but hypothetically, this could be any other device that you've used to generate a threat and verify that it's working, or a threat or a legitimate threat from a device that's already being protected. Click on the threat, or you expand the threat details device list there. Click the little checkbox next to the device, click device actions, and then click on quarantine. Now that we've covered the basic steps to verify that your EDR install is functioning correctly, let's go through a demo so you can actually see all of these tools in action.
Kicking off the demonstration here, we're just going to go in the same order that we covered the topics in previously. So we're going to start with real-time search. Now, a basic query you can use just to make sure that your devices are online and get their host name as well as their quarantine status is just to run this search right here. So host info, host name, and connection status. And this will provide an output of all of your machines that are connected through DXL that have Envision EDR installed and are reporting correctly up through the cloud. Now, as we can see here, I've got about 10 machines responding out of 11 that seem to have EDR installed. And we do have multiple on-prem EPOs connected to this EDR tenant. But yeah, that's the basic output. And if you want to do a bit more, rather than just determining that EDR is installed and responding to real-time search, you can also do a search query which will return any machines which have a specific file, which will allow you to verify that your files collector is working correctly and that file hashing is enabled. So we're going to do a search here. For any machines that have a file named test.exe. If you want to make sure that this returns something, all you need to do is make sure that file hashing is enabled through policy, that the file hashing has completed, and then just you can create an empty text file named test.txt and rename it to test.exe, or you can do what I did in this instance and simply create a self-extractable zip archive named test.exe using 7-zip. I'll give this just another minute here to return the results. And here we are. Now, moving on to the next verification step, we'll do a quick demonstration of the historical search. So what we're going to do here is just create a test file here, just like the example in the slides. Yes, and we'll actually take this just a step further. Create a self-extractable zip archive. Go ahead and run this guy so we can get the process execution. Now if we go back into the EDR workspace and go to the historical search pane, go ahead and pull that guy up. If we give him just a minute here, it's near instantaneous, but not quite. Just give it a second here to generate or filter those results up to the cloud. And there we go. We can now see that that example.com file is showing, and the example.exe should be showing fairly soon here as well. And there we go. There's the example.exe, and it shows that it was renamed from the original 7-zip self-extractable archive executable. And we'll see the process execution here as well. So now, after we've verified that the basic functionality is working correctly, we can move on to actually triggering a detection through trace and performing an action on an endpoint based on that threat. So what we'll do here, I'm logged on here through the vSphere console, since quarantining a network or quarantining the device will kill network access, so we don't want to lose an RDP session. So keep that in mind if you do any testing here. It's better to do it on a physical device, but if you can't, make sure you're accessing it through the console. So what we're going to do here is go to the McAfee knowledge base article. So we'll go to this knowledge base article here, which provides the steps to generate a test detection and also contains the PowerShell command that you can use to generate a detection with EDR. So what we're going to do here is just extract this text file. Copy and paste that command into a PowerShell session. Command prompt will also work, but I prefer to use PowerShell since that's what's in the start menu on newer Windows 10 versions. So you can see that that command exited. And now if we give that just a minute here, on the monitoring page of the EDR workspace, we should see that detection pop up as it filters through DXL up to the cloud. So this is the actual detection that's triggered from that test command. Now it's showing an older activity date because this was when I executed it a bit earlier. but once that does crop up through and process on the back end, you'll see this thread here. So I'm just going to continue with the demo here onto the quarantining verification step. So all you have to do here is select the affected device that you've executed a test threat on, click quarantine. Now if we go back over here, if you have this enabled in policy, once the quarantine action takes effect, you'll see a little pop-up here that indicates that the endpoint has been quarantined, and the only network access that is allowed is going up through your McAfee infrastructure that you have in place, so through the agent and DXL. We can observe this here. We're not going to be able to make it to google.com. Now to end that quarantine, we just want to refresh the affected devices here so we can confirm that the quarantine action was successful. You just click on that little tick box again and click End Quarantine. And again, if you have this enabled in policy, you can set the message. You'll receive this little message here indicating that the quarantine is ended. And we can confirm here that we're able to access the internet again. Now, another way that you can take actions on devices is through real-time search. So what I'm going to do here, just as an example, is launch this executable called testing.exe. Now, if we go back to the real-time search and search for just this device that I'm running that executable on, this one should come up fairly quickly in comparison to the files query. Now, if you want to take an action on the device, so what we can do here is kill that process, for example. So we'll just do kill process by name. That process was named testing.exe. So if we run that action, flip back over to the system, we'll see in just a moment here that process gets terminated. While these few checks are by no means the only way to verify that your EDR deployment is successful, they can certainly be a starting point in your testing and implementation of the product to a wider audience.
This concludes my portion of the
Thanks,
webinar,
Mitchell.
so I'm going to go ahead
As a
and hand it
reminder,
back over to
McAfee
Nick.
Education Services offers exceptional training to go along with our award-winning products. If you would like to learn more, please visit the website listed on the screen to see all of our offerings. I want to thank everyone for joining today's webinar, and a big thank you to our speakers, Mitchell and Ben. This concludes today's webinar. Stay safe, everyone.